And then after that introduction, the idea of the sacred space of Al Haram al Makki is introduced, and that expression, which is quite remarkable, ومن يرد فيه بإلحاد بظلم نذقه من عذاب أليم, that when it comes to Mecca, the expression of whoever, well, let's see, whoever Muhammad Asad translates it as, and all who seek to profane it by deliberate evil doing, all such shall we cause to taste grievous suffering in the life to come. Ilhad zulm is not just profane it by deliberate evil doing. The grammatical construction imparts the idea, which we've touched upon last halaqa, that committing injustice in Mecca is tantamount to ilhad, is tantamount to disbelief altogether. So disbelief committed in Mecca is a great injustice. Disbelief committed in Mecca, this is specially consecrated space. It is not like any other space. So disbelief committed in Mecca is injustice. It is as if God is saying, you want to not believe, go somewhere else. This space is reserved. But also, committing an injustice is tantamount to disbelief if committed in the space. And this is why we have all these ahadith that say that even if you hoard products or you try to engage in some type of monopoly of trade in Mecca, that's equal to disbelief. Or that if you cheat in commercial transactions in Mecca, that's equal to disbelief. The list is long, and in the Islamic, it's more Islamic ethics than Islamic law. Although jurists like Shafi'i and Abu Hanifa and so on, or Hanafi jurists generally, had long discussions about how the state must treat crimes or the commission of any type of injustice in Mecca as a most grave infraction, and that the state has to have special laws to maintain or protect the moral order in Mecca. But this is a broader topic. Early on, people like Amr ibn Aus, and this was a strong orientation, especially in the first couple of centuries in Islam, reflected in statements of, or at least attributed to the statements of many Sahaba, especially people like Umar ibn Khattab, Imam Ali, an abundance of reports, in early individuals like Amr ibn Aus, that this explicitly means that the state that commission of injustice or oppression in Mecca is absolute sacrilege. Some even claimed that the reason that the capital, after Khulafa al-Rashidun, the rightly guided Khulafa, the first four, at least in the Sunni tradition, that the reason that the capital was never restored to Mecca, and rather moved instead to Damascus and then Baghdad, is because the state was aware that Mecca is beyond politics, or at least that it would cause a great deal of offense to Muslims to commit the type of political maneuverings and nonsense that goes on normally in empires, and that Mecca had to be maintained as a sanctuary with rules that always accepted it from the vagaries of politics and so on. There is a report, just for the sake of being complete and exhaustive, that a man called Abdullah ibn Anis, who was a Meccan and immigrated from Mecca to Medina, that Abdullah ibn Anis started having an argument with a native Medinian, was an Ansari, and that during the course of this argument, they started. It was an argument about tribal argument. They were arguing about which tribe is superior. You know, like the typical Arab arguments, tafakhur bil ansab and so on. And the Abdullah ibn Anis ended up murdering the Ansari, killed him, and then he apostated and escaped from Medina after apostating from Islam and returned to Mecca. And then you have these traditions that say that the occasion for this ayah, من يريد به الحد بظلم, that particular expression, was referring to the incident of Abdullah ibn Anis. Again, I mean, it very doubtful. Did the incident with Abdullah ibn Anis happen? Probably. There was a man called Abdullah ibn Anis, and he did apostate, and he did escape to Mecca. And then when Muslims eventually conquered Mecca, Abdullah ibn Anis feared that Muslims will punish him for having murdered the Ansari and then apostating. And the Abdullah ibn Anis goes on the run again after Muslims conquer Mecca. And then we have conflicting reports about the fate of Abdullah ibn Anis, whether he returned to Islam or whether he perished in the desert, or whether, there are conflicting reports about what becomes of him. Abdullah ibn Anis, the story of his murdering the Ansari took place around the 5th Hijri year or 6th Hijri year. In my view, which means a few years after the revelation of Surah Al Hajj. So that those who claimed that this ayah was revealed in response to the Abdullah ibn Anis incident, it's baseless. I mean, and it's extremely weak. And some of the medieval scholars, expressed serious doubts about the Abdullah ibn Anis incident, and that in fact that this is what what occasioned من يرد فيه بإلحاد بظلم, that it was referring to that incident. Most scholars in the for the great balance of Islamic history understood the discourse of Surah Al Hajj about Mecca as transcending any particular occasion or any particular incident. But, and this is amply illustrated with the Prophet ﷺ saying that only in Mecca, even if you plan to commit an injustice, but not carrying out, even if you don't ultimately carry out the injustice that you plan to commit, only in Mecca do you in fact become liable for the plan, even if not executed, which means that Mecca as sacred space has very special rules. The reason I'm underscoring this so heavily is that if I was teaching this a couple of centuries ago, this would be common knowledge to everyone. Everyone would basically say, okay, move on. We know that Mecca has special rules, that there are special regulations, that the moral status of Mecca is very particular. But what is mind-boggling is that in the 20th century in particular, with the dawn of colonialism and the rise of the Wahhabi movement, but particularly in the 20th century, the escalation in the loss of memory about the special status of Mecca is unprecedented in Islamic history. So if you even look at Majallat al-Azhar or Majalla like Mimbar al-Islam, or Majallat al-Thaqafa, which used to be published in Cairo in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and you find the articles written about Mecca, you find that still these articles were keenly aware about the special status of what sacredness meant in Mecca. By the time we get to the 50s and 60s, with the massive plans to expand the Haram al-Makki and to make it more commercially lucrative, and the destruction of so many historical sites, what went along with this is the de-emphasis of the untouchability and immutability of Mecca as sacred space. Massive shifts, and it's still scholarship of Muslims in the modern age about something so critical is deeply deficient and wanting.